Hey, everybody, and welcome to IndieQuest, a celebration of the indie and obscure. Your podcast all about the celebration of indie games and how awesome and fantastic and wonderful and spectacular they are. I'm your host, Josh, and I'm here with my co-host, Steve. How's it going, man?
Yeah, it's going pretty good today, man. I don't think I have much to complain about. How you doing?
I am a little under the weather this week, but doing pretty good besides that. It's kind of clearing up today. I took some medicine, and I just kind of felt like a god for a minute when I took the medicine. Have you ever had that moment where you take the medicine and it just starts to kick in, and you're like, "Oh, I feel like I could sprint or I could climb a mountain right now."
I've been there. It doesn't happen often, but when you got to catch those 30-second bursts when they happen.
Yeah, 100%. So we have some listener Q&A that have kind of been sitting in the chamber for, a month now? Something like that?
If not longer, yeah.
So I think we're going to start off this podcast going through some of these questions. So why don't you go ahead and read the first one here?
Yeah, all right. Our first one comes from SNES Drunk and asks, what was your gateway game to the indie scene? The title that really opened your eyes to how different the AAA and indie landscapes truly were. So we actually did an episode that covered a lot of this. So some of my answer may be hearkening back to the Indie Origins episode. But for me, the early influences were largely, I would attribute to Xbox Live Arcade and early Humble Indie bundles. I was like playing some indie stuff probably before the 2010s, but it was really late 2000s, early 2010s when sort of that early indie renaissance took hold. Stuff like Limbo, Braid, Super Meat Boy, all those games were blowing up, and I was like right there riding that wave along with them. So then I started getting all these random games from indie bundles because they were just so cheap. I couldn't believe the freaking deals I was getting, and then before you know it, a decade has gone by and I'm recording a podcast about them. So there you go.
That's awesome. Same here. If you want a more in-depth discussion about this, we talked for I think 35 to 40 minutes, going really deep into all this stuff on that Indie Origins episode if you haven't listened to it. But for me, it's Minecraft, which I talked about before, and I've talked about on other podcasts a million times, but it's the first game I've ever seen somebody start from the beginning, from this little tiny thing, and build to a bigger thing with a giant community and, basically one of the biggest IP and games of all time now, but so big that the main character that's not really a character is in Smash, so that's pretty crazy, so that's the first game I ever seen and was with from an early access standpoint. And also, I didn't mention it before, one thing that I did follow for a while, which is a mod, is Gmod. Do you ever play Gmod?
No, I never have.
Yeah, and I really love Half-Life, like Half-Life 2. It's one of the best games, first-person shooters of all time, in my opinion. And then Gmod pretty much took all the assets from a bunch of source games and then said, here you go, have fun, make a bunch of mini games with it, which was pretty cool. There's Trouble in Terrorist Town, which is a really super fun little mini game, and then they have one where you have to take items and build a boat, because some of the items have floating abilities. So basically you have to combine them together with a weld tool and make the best boat that won't collapse as this environment is flooding. So a bunch of little mini games like that. They had role-playing servers, just it was a really cool tool set, and that's one of the earliest Tinkerer sandbox tool sets I've ever seen, and that was made by one guy, so it has that indie feel to it, in my opinion, even though it's using assets from a big blockbuster game.
Interesting.
So I would say those are probably some of the earliest ones, and then of course, like you, I got all those Humble Indie bundles and just was drowning in them indie games and just loving those so much.
It was a good problem to have, though, back in the day. I miss the original Humble Indie bundles. Humble does all kinds of crazy stuff now, and it's still a good deal, but it was such an event back then. Oh, very, very nostalgic for it. But at this point, I'm just repeating what we talked about in the episode. So yeah, like you said, there's a deep dive in the Indie Origins episode. You can check the feed for it. We go into all this stuff. If you're also nostalgic for Xbox Live Arcade, you will not be disappointed. But why don't you take the next question here from Briz?
Yeah, Briz was mentioning in the Discord recently that he was pretty nostalgic for Xbox Live Arcade too. Anyway, Briz says, do you think it's fair that indie games and AAA games are judged alike during award shows like the Game Awards? I would say yes. They're video games, right? Like, we're all enjoying them. I actually think it's a little cooler if a tiny game made by 3 people wins Game of the Year. I think that's a way cooler thing than, hey, this game that cost $50 million and was developed by 2,000, 3,000 people, whatever, won Game of the Year. I think that's kind of a cool story, but I don't think any other game should be held at a different standard just because it's not AAA, or if it isn't, is AAA, really.
Yeah, I think in terms of like a Game of the Year discussion, I do absolutely think they should get lumped together because, I mean, ultimately when you synthesize those conversations down to their like barest elements, you're just talking about what games you enjoyed the most, and it doesn't matter the budget or scale or size of the team when it comes to how much you enjoyed a game. But I also think for most categories too, it would be weird to leave indie games out, right? So you think like best, if you're doing things like best gameplay or best original soundtrack, a lot of times some of the best soundtracks come out of indie games, whether it's like chiptune type stuff or not. There's such a variety, and I feel like indie really helps add diversity to those categories because a lot of times AAA will be a little bit more predictable, like a little more orchestral and things like that. So yeah, I think it's good that indie games get lumped in together, and there will always be categories where they don't fit in. Like, if you're separating awards out for best art technical versus like best art stylistic, it's probably not going to win technical because that kind of just ties into the budget you have to produce. But even if they're not a fit for everything, I do like that they get generally put into the same categories.
I agree 100%. I mean, it was nice to see, like, Celeste, that's a good example, be on the big stage with other giant games like Red Dead and stuff that year. So, I love seeing that, and I love indie games, obviously. That's why I'm here talking about them. So, any time, like, seeing these smaller games that have a cool idea, and then they break out into the mainstream is just really awesome to me. I love seeing it. How about you read this next question from Burger Champ?
Sounds good. Burger Champ, another Discord companion here, asks, would you prefer to see games that swing, or would you prefer to see more games that swing for the fences and fall a little short, or games that play it a little safer but are more polished and approachable? Now, I don't know about you, but this is an easy choice for me. I always will prefer that a game swings for the fences and falls a little bit short. I can stomach a little bit of jank. Honestly, I can stomach a lot of jank. Jank doesn't really bother me that much, but I will stomach that for ambition 99 times out of 100, right? Like, indie games are a good space to like take risks and try new things, and a lot of times a imperfect new idea is a lot more fun to play than like an approachable 8 out of 10 very predictable game. So yeah, I say always shoot for the moon, because you know what? If you miss, you still land amongst the stars.
Oh, I think that you put it probably better than I could put it, but I do enjoy a game that tries new ideas and tries new mechanics out. I don't mind the safer approach games either, but there's something about finding a game that does this extremely insane and wild idea you've never heard of, or has an art style that's just super insane. Like we were, before we did the show, we saw that game had that, like, I don't know, old school, like black and white. What was that game? Old Crown, right? Something like that. I don't remember.
Yeah, Death Crown or something
Death
like
Crown,
that.
yeah.
Like old, almost like early PC graphics, but modernized, like early Apple II type graphics, but modernized. It was very odd.
Yeah, it was, and it had like kind of like death metal playing, or like I don't know, it was really weird, but like you could see that game was taking a swing. I'd rather that, see that type of thing, or like what is it, Return of the Obra Dinn, right? That game has a super unique style and something you've never seen before. I would love to see that. And that game, I never actually played that game, and I know that's on my pile of shame right there. But I know that game's highly, highly loved. And see, maybe that game doesn't fall short. But take a game like that had a crazy art style, crazy mechanics, and then it's just a little meh at moments, but it's still kind of cool that they tried it. I'd rather that than, okay, here's shooter number 42. Let's go, So
yeah.
Yep.
And I usually feel like the easiest way that games fall short with their ambition is they have a really ambitious like a mechanic or idea, and then it ends up being repetitive because they didn't find enough ways to be creative with it. But even that I don't mind because I just respect the good ideas. But I don't know. I mean, and certainly there's always situations where it can go too far to an extreme. Like if you have a really cool idea, but your game just like doesn't perform, like it just can't maintain any semblance of a reasonable frame rate, that's going to detract so much that I probably can't enjoy it. But honestly, games that are so marred by technical issues that they can't even be enjoyed are a lot less common than you might think, or at least to me they are. Very, very rarely does that happen. So yeah, shoot for your most ambitious idea every time. That's what I say. But why don't you read this last question here from Pam?
Okay, Pam from Cannot Be Tamed says or asks, are there certain genres you think the indie space does better than the bigger budget developers? The first thing that, when I read this, that came to mind was roguelikes and roguelike games. I feel like I don't think you see that much in the AAA space in the first place. So I guess that already is kind of answering itself. There's actually, the Housemarque games coming out, Returnal, which is a roguelike, and that's like a big budget AAA game. So maybe that's kind of cheating since AAA doesn't do it as often. But maybe like a side-scrolling game, they don't really see much AAA side-scrollers anymore either. So what do you think on this one?
Yeah, I kind of came to the same conclusion. I don't know that there's certain genres that I feel they always do better in the indie space. There's just genres that are more common, right? So like you mentioned, roguelikes. I think puzzle platformers, which is probably what you were getting at with 2D platformers, is one that it is very common in the indie space and not nearly as much in any kind of big budget. How's like adventure games, point and click, that seems like it's kind of merged more to an indie type thing too. But yeah, I don't know that there's any standout genres that win. One thing I will say that I feel like happens every now and again in the indie space is, for whatever reason, whether people are just like fed up with waiting or it's just like a real huge passion project, I feel like sometimes an indie studio or even an indie developer, like singular, will want a new game in a AAA or a bigger budget series, not be getting it for so long that they just go out and make their own. So like the really famous example of this is Stardew Valley, right? They're like, give me a new Harvest Moon game that I'm going to love. And Harvest Moon was, changing and doing things in their own way for whatever reason or whatever market forces were encouraging that. And that developer was like, you know what? Forget it. I'm just going to make my own. And then it turns out to be like what is essentially the most beloved Harvest Moon game that's ever been made. So I think sometimes that's where indie shines, is kind of like giving core fans what they want when maybe the bigger studios have lost sight or been forced to move away from giving that.
Have you seen the trailer for Bomb Rush Cyberpunk?
Is that the Jet Grind Radio with the serial numbers filed off?
Pretty much, yes.
Yeah, that's a perfect example too, right?
It's an indie team that's super into just that style. The trailer looks like it could pretty much be a modern Jet Grind Radio or Jet Set Radio, and they have like people. They got a bunch of people that have made remixes of the soundtracks for like old school Jet Set Radio to do the soundtrack for that. It's just like a huge fan project, it looks pretty cool. It's what's that that fighting game, that baseball fighting game? Do you know what I'm talking about?
No, I don't know.
Okay, well, anyway, it's the developer of that game, but it's like there's like a baseball fighting game, which of course there is. It's indie games. I think that's the coolest thing about this style of this sector of games is there's a lot of weird stuff out there. and it's worth
Yeah.
exploring, which I love doing. But yeah, I agree, man. Like, I don't really see like Sony Santa Monica making a roguelike with Metroidvania elements or anything, you know?
Yeah.
So,
It's interesting how things are just kind of like shaken out to these Venn diagrams of here's the 15 genres that AAA does a lot, here's the 15 that indie does a lot, and then I don't even know what's the middle ground. Like what do they both do? What genres are common in all spaces?
maybe 3D platformers now, because actually PlayStation's been doing some this year ish.
Ah,
Yeah.
I mean, I do like the idea of more 3D platformers, so I think that's probably about the best you can get, other than like, I don't know, maybe puzzle games. I'm not sure.
Just shooters, maybe first person shooters in general. I mean, there are a lot of indie first person shooters also, and AAA. They're different though. They usually have a different hook to them. So,
Yeah.
all right. Well, I think we answer those questions significantly and very well because we're really smart individuals, right?
That's what I've always thought to be true. Now, if people want to ask us questions for feature on a future episode of the show, where can they do that?
They can either email us over at IndieQuestPod@gmail.com or on Twitter at IndieQuestPod. You can send us a DM over there if you don't feel comfortable people seeing it broadcast to your followers or whatever. You can do that, or you can just add us over there. We appreciate any feedback.
Yeah, we love feedback, and we love getting people involved in discussions and helping shape the show. So don't be shy. Reach out to us however you can. We're happy to take your call.
So I think it's time we jump into this episode's Indie Picks. You ready?
Let's talk about some good old-fashioned indie games. Why don't I start us out? I've brought today, this is a game that's been out for a little while, but it's one that I didn't play until just recently. I'm going to ask you, as I always do at the start here, have you played Old Man's Journey?
This is one I've had and I own in multiple places, but I have never played it. So, nope.
Awesome. So, Old Man's Journey, this is developed by Broken Rules. It was first released in 2017, in May 2017, and then it released on a bunch more platforms in 2018. So it's one of those games at this point that you can get on mobile, you can get on PC, you can get on, at least in the PlayStation network of consoles. I'm sure it's on Xbox too, and on Switch. Oh, it's definitely on Switch.
I think it's on Game Pass right now, at least as of recording right now. So.
Oh, wow. Well, hey, look at we're being even more topical than I was planning on, because I played the Switch version. But to break this game down, it's a pretty simple game. I do think this was designed as a mobile game initially. The game starts out, you're playing as the character that I will just refer to as Old Man, because it is Old Man's Journey. And the very first scene you see is him receiving a letter from the mailman. He reads it. He goes into his house, puts on like his hiking gear, and he puts on his comfy sweatpants, and he just starts walking. And you're like, what did that letter say that made this dude just kind of uproot his life and start this journey? And as you go along, story-wise, you'll run into different like characters or into different vistas and things. And as he gets to things that he's seen in the past, he will basically remember back into his earlier days, and you start to get a little bit of the context of the story through flashbacks that he has. Jumps like, 30, 40 years into the past. And it's just you journeying from location to location. You're working towards this kind of ultimate end destination that you really don't know until the end of the game. Trying to kind of, understand this guy's life and just enjoy the journey. Mechanically, that results in you doing some pretty basic puzzling. The big mechanic, the big conceit of this game is, as you're walking, you can adjust the elevation of terrain around you. So everything, all the places you walk are kind of like rounded hills. Think of like what you might see in the back of a Mario game or something. Mm-hmm. And you can push and pull those up and down, and you're just trying to adjust the terrain so that different layers of the foreground and background terrain line up to let him navigate from one to the other. So, you might have something that's blocking your way, but you can raise a hill up in the background and lower your hill down so that there's like a walkable path, and then he'll move from the foreground to the background. and you'll just kind of keep walking that way. It's just you trying to get from A to B by moving these background layers around. Little weird to explain, but very intuitive once you start doing it.
Do you have actual control of him, or do you just control the backgrounds, or does he automatically walk when you get the puzzle correct?
You tap or basically you press on the environment, and he'll walk to that point if he can walk to that point. So like Diablo style movement, where you just click and the character chases to that spot. Usually that's more of you just like testing, because you'll move the hills around and stuff, and then you'll click kind of at the end of the screen, and if he starts walking, you'll know, oh, okay, I've made a path that he can walk along. And if not, you still have to move stuff around. And they mix it up a little bit here and there. It's very light puzzling in general, but they do add in a couple wrinkles every now and again. There are sections with waterfalls where if the character walks over the waterfall, they'll fall down from like a higher level to a lower level. There are these sections with sheep, which are kind of grazing in these grassy patches, and you can like touch them to basically like push them from one grassy patch to another one. So you'll have to, maybe you'll walk halfway between two patches of grass, you'll raise the hill up, and then you'll tap the sheep so they run past him, and then you can lower the hill back down and go to where they just were. Stuff like that. But it's really never anything that you're going to get stuck on. Like you'll blaze through most of the puzzles pretty quickly without too much head scratching.
Pretty much just tinker around until you figure it out. It's nothing like, oh my god, this is impossible, or yeah, cool. How's the music in this? And what's the art style look like? Which I didn't really ask you before. How does it look just generally, and then how does it sound?
Looks great. I'm always bad at describing art styles, but it's very much I almost kind of bordering on like a watercolor painting. Like every individual screenshot of this game looks like it could be a painting in and of itself. It's got these like soft, beautiful colors, very much like a lot of greens and pinks and various colors that you'd see in the sunset, things like that. It's a very calming, very beautiful game. And then the soundtrack matches that perfectly. It's composed by an artist named Scientific. It's actually SCNTFC, which I'm pretty sure is scientific without any vowels in it. And it does a good job striking a couple different moods. There's actually some pretty good, pretty upbeat, like kind of fun, lighter songs in there. And then there's never anything that's like too dark. But as you go along, especially as like the emotional journey starts to ramp up, there are some kind of more somber, minor key, like almost kind of like a sinister vibe to them. Just some like more intense songs. So it's never like a harsh soundtrack. It's very much always very melodically pleasing, I guess. But it does have a couple different moods to it. It's a great soundtrack though, honestly. It's one that after beating the game I've gone back to and listened to like in the background while I'm doing some work. It's perfect to like kind of cheer you up and put you in a good mood. Very very cleansing for a dirty mind.
We all know you have a dirty mind, Steve. We all know.
A cluttered mind, maybe is a better word.
Yeah, maybe. How's the story? I mean, you said it was really good. Does it feel like it has a nice payoff? Do you feel pretty satisfied by the end of this journey? How long is the game? Is it longer or shorter?
Not too long at all. I think it's probably about 2 hours to get through, maybe a little more or less depending on how good you are at puzzling. And they don't have a lot of time to build on that story, and there's really not any voiced dialogue. It's all just kind of told through pictures and snapshots and I guess like inferences. Mm-hmm. But it's pretty effective. You kind of like, I don't know, maybe I've just played a lot of indie games, or maybe I just am cynical. You kind of start out and you sort of expect yourself to, how do I say this, to take a certain emotional journey by the end.
Yeah.
And so in that way, it's predictable, I guess, but I feel like the specifics and the specifics weren't exactly predictable, and the payoff, I think, was still powerful. So it was good. It was fun. it can get a little repetitive from time to time, but thankfully at only like a 2-hour clock time, that repetition is never really too intrusive.
Yeah, so it's kind of like one of those things like you kind of, I think indie games do that to a T. Like a lot of times when you have a shorter one of these games, it's like you kind of, like you were saying, you kind of know by the end, like what you're in for when you sit down with it. It's like, okay, you know this game's going to be some kind of short story that will most likely punch you in the feels at the end. So that sounds like pretty much what this ended up being, huh?
Yep, you kind of steal your gut going in. You're like, well, this guy's not... No one gets a letter and rushes out of their home because of something upbeat or trivial, Like, it's always going to be something. So, that said, it's still very well told, I think, for what it is, even if it's straightforward.
Any closing thoughts before we put it on the quest log today?
No, I would say this game will probably run great on wherever you can get it. It's short, sweet, easy to get through. Honestly, the interface seems like it was maybe designed for touch screens, like the way that you can click on and drag the hills or up and down the terrain. So I'd say maybe play it on a device like either on a phone or an iPad or a Switch. Something with a touch interface would probably be best. But that said, it'll work great on PC. It'll work great on PlayStation 2. It's just you'll do a little more of like navigating the cursor around than you might want to. But no, it's a fun game. It's always hard when you come down to that age-old question, right?
Where's it going to go on our quest log? So if you guys don't know, if this is your first episode of IndieQuest, first off, hi. We appreciate you being here.
Welcome.
Secondly, we take our indie picks each episode and we put them on a thing called the quest log, which has 2 segments to it. The first one is a main quest, which is a game that you just have to play right now. You have to just drop everything you're doing. If you're cooking dinner, don't even turn off the stove. Just maybe turn off the stove. Don't burn your house down over an indie game. Or do it. Who cares? Stop cooking. Run to your room. Download the game. Play it right away. Because it's just that damn good. You have to get to that game. You have to play. You have to experience it. This is our biggest recommendation that we possibly could do. This is our A+ endorsement. This is the gold medal prize. This is... this is the badge of honor if you get the main quest. And of course, the next section is the side quest, which is a game that we still highly recommend. We still think it's worth your time, but just take what we say about it and then play it whenever you're in the mood for that style of game. It's still a recommendation. We still really enjoy the game. And like Steve has said, sometimes maybe a side quest game that we recommend for a side quest ends up being a main quest for you. You never know. And that's what this whole show's about. It's about positivity and recommending awesome games. So, Steve, where are you going to put Old Man's Journey today?
In my heart, every game's a main quest, but this just feels like a really solid side quest game. And I don't think it's for any particular failing. It's not like there's one thing holding this game back. This is just, it's a classic, solid all-arounder. It's a great experience to go through. Just a lot of fun. So it would be the cool kid in the side quests club, but it's hanging in the side quest.
Which, like I said, that's not a bad thing. Side quest is still a really great game.
No, what you don't realize is before the show, anything that isn't a recommendation, we already filter out. So if we're talking about it, honestly, if you hear me say the name of the game, you could probably just mute the podcast, go to the quest log, look where it is, and then go play that game anyways. Because if I decided to bring it, it means that I wanted to share it with the world. So, heck yeah. Side quests. Me and my side quests ride or die for life, my friend.
Same here. So I guess it's my turn, huh?
Yeah, what'd you bring for us? Some really obscure, unknown indie game, something no one's ever heard of, given a recommendation that the people can go see if they can even find this game on Google, if they can even get their search results to pull anything up. What'd you bring?
This little game that no one's ever heard of called Among Us.
Oh, tell me more.
Okay, well, I'll justify my reasons for bringing it in a second, but it's developed by Inner Sloth LLC, released June 15th, 2018. It's not a 2020 game, as a lot of people will think. It's later released on Windows, and due to its popularity in the last year, it's releasing on all the consoles, Xbox and Switch, and rumored to be coming to PlayStation pretty soon. All the games have crossplay. It's a multiplayer-only game, so you basically get a room code, and then you can share it, and anybody who has the game can play with you. Doesn't matter what platform you are on. So you can have 2 people on PC, 1 person on Switch, and 1 person on Xbox, and everybody can play together, which is awesome. So the main gameplay and what this game is all about, and why it kind of took off, I think, in 2020, it's a multiplayer social deduction game. So you kind of play these. It's a top-down game. You play. And it has kind of like a hand-drawn, kind of cartoony art style, very simple and basic looking art style. And I'm describing this game that pretty much, I'm sure a lot of people already know what it is. But hey, I brought the game because I think it has a fascinating story. Because like a lot of streamers, like big streamers like Soda Poppin', which I don't know the names of these streamers. I don't know all these people, but the QXC, Pokimane, Shroud, Ninja, and PewDiePie, which I know most of those actually, in 2020, they all got together and started playing this game, and it was super obscure. It came out in 2018, and like nobody really knew about it or played it that much, but it got like this huge surge in popularity to the point that it actually won like multiplayer game of the year, best mobile game, and a bunch of stuff for 2020, even though it was a 2018 game. So it's just like a really awesome success story, which we actually kind of talk about that before, like a little game that just kind of blew up and then got awards alongside the big games. But the thing is, it's not even a 2020 game, but everybody kind of considers it to be a 2020 game because of how popular it got during the pandemic and everything last year.
Yeah, I read that that it had gone end of life before it blew up. Like they had basically said, we've released everything we're going to stop development and work on the sequel. Mm-hmm. And then they had to like double back on that when it got so popular. They were like, oh, you know what? All right, we'll go back to supporting this now that everybody's super into it.
Yeah, they canceled the sequel. We're like, oh, well, we're just going to try to incorporate what we're going to do in the sequel in the first game now. So, yeah, it's a super huge game. Let's describe what the gameplay is like. Like I said, it's a top-down game, cartoony art style. There is anywhere from 4 to 10 players. The more players, the better. Voice chat is pretty much a must-do in this game, in my opinion. It does have text chat, but it's definitely not as fun as if you don't have... You basically have to be on a call with your buddies in this game, in my opinion. Mm. It doesn't have in-game voice chat yet. They are said to include it later in the future, but... Basically, you're on a ship and you have tasks that you have to complete. And there are 1 to 2 people among you that are imposters that are trying to kill the crewmates as they do their tasks on the ship. And you don't know who it is. You have no idea. And if you're an imposter, you kind of have to pretend that you're doing the tasks. So you got to have familiarity with the like mechanics. So basically, the task can range from downloading a file on one part of the ship, or you have to go to the med bay, clone yourself. There's like a cloning terminal or whatever. It takes like DNA from you. There's like a little asteroids mini game. There's like a card swipe mechanic. There's a bunch of little mini games pretty much in the ship that you kind of have to do as the crew. So if the crew does all the tasks, they win. They either find the 2 imposters and boot them off the ship, or they complete all the tasks. That's how you can win as a crewmate. And if you're an imposter, you either kill everybody or you survive. Basically, you just got to kill everybody. You got to be the last couple people there. So, it's kind of an interesting mechanic. And if you're on voice chat, the rule is you do not talk to each other while you're doing the tasks. And if you get killed by an imposter, you have to mute yourself. You can't talk at all. And then what will happen is the crewmate will be doing his task and come across a dead body. That imposter killed somebody, and then you start a meeting, and then everybody can join in the voice chat unless you're dead, and then you kind of debate with each other, like, no, I saw Johnny go around that corner, I swear to God, he was over there, and then I saw him go in the vents, because you can also go into the vents inside there and like hide, and stuff like that, and then pretty much you're trying to lie your way out of being a killer in this game, and it ends up being just a super fun party game. And I think that's the reason it took off, especially in a year where a lot of people can't go out and hang out with people. They can go on here and have a good time and basically call their other friends liars and then lie to their friends and then see who's the best liar. And it ends up being just a super fun experience.
You know, here's a little peek behind the curtain for people. You know, sometimes someone brings an indie game and the other person has played it. They know everything about it. So, you know, Josh might be describing it to me and I'm like, interesting. What about this? What about that? But in reality, I know all about it. Believe it or not, you have brought probably the most popular indie game we've ever had on the show. And I have actually never played or seen it ever. So I'm actually ignorant to how it plays. And it sounds cool. Mm-hmm. It sounds a lot like Werewolf. Sounds like something that I've like played in person at parties before. But what is stopping someone from just giving it away? You said that they're muted. Is it all just like an honor system thing, or is there something in game that obscures information to make sure that people can't just reveal everything?
Yeah, it's pretty much honor system. So if you're playing, you got to make sure you're playing and like I said, there's no in-game voice chat, so you're probably going to be on a Discord call or something like that with your friends while you play. So it's known going in, especially unless you've never played before, but the general rule is if you're dead, you stay dead, you can't hear your voice, you're dead, you're a ghost. And actually, if you die, you do become a ghost, and you still have to do your tasks as a ghost in the game, which is...
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, to continue that taskbar to go up. So you still have stuff to do after you get killed. So it's not like you die and you just watch everything play out, so which is good. I think that actually keeps it more entertaining, because sometimes you die in the first round, and then you'd just be sitting there if you didn't have nothing to do. But yeah, it's pretty much honor system. If you're an imposter, you're gonna want to pretend to be not an imposter, right? So you're gonna be accusing people. You're gonna be, I saw Mick go that way. You know what I mean, or whoever. Just you gotta like. It's pretty much just trying to trick your friends into not guessing you. And I actually played with a bunch of people in the Polykill Discord, and Pam is pretty good at this game. She's pretty good at convincing people that she's not the imposter. She's won multiple times, and I think she's just good at like picking her times to talk, But yeah, it's like this game is just it's just a super fun party game.
Yeah, it sounds like a really good time. Like I said, I love Werewolf. I've not to toot my own horn, but people have also told me that I'm good at Werewolf, and it's like I don't know how I feel being told that I'm a good liar, but you take the compliment where you can get it, I guess. But the difference really between Among Us and other games that I've seen is this concept of tasks, right? It's like FTL meets one of these games. Do those tasks change every time? Like, are there a random set of tasks that you might get out of a larger pool, or is it always the same ones? And then when you're doing them, are you actually doing something, or is it more like just watching a bar fill as an excuse for you to have your back to the door?
Okay, so pretty much, yeah, that's actually a good question. There's a huge pool of tasks that the ship needs to be done, like get completed to get the ship back up and running. Pretty much that's the conceit of the game. So when you jump in, you'll get like a list that you can pull down. That'll be a set of tasks and randomized from the giant pool of tasks that the ship needs to be done. So everybody gets a random list. And there's actually it's actually designed for a touch interface, kind of like Old Man's Journey. Like you can tell that they had like, swiping the screen or tapping the screen as the direct control. It works really good on computer with the mouse and keyboard. It's about the same. But like there's multiple mini games, and it will pull up an interface over your screen too. So like if someone's sneaking up on you and you do a task, it might actually obscure your view enough for somebody to come in and kill you while you do it. So you'll have there's like a garbage chute. You have to like pull a lever on a garbage chute and wait for all the stuff to drain out. So you'd be in the terminal for a few seconds. And then there's like a credit card. You literally have to swipe a credit card across like a card reader and do it at the exact right speed, or it doesn't read. And then there's like I said, there's like an asteroids mini game. There's like asteroids coming through, and you have to shoot it, 20 of them. And then there's like a Simon Says mini game where you have to do like 6 layers of a Simon Says. And pretty much the thing it does is distracts the crewmates long enough to where people can come in and kill you. So it's kind of hard to see, or, oh, that person's acting suspicious, but hey, I couldn't see him because I was in a mini game or I was doing a task. So
interesting. That sounds, honestly, it sounds like a lot of fun. But so as you're playing this game, I mean, you got to be entertained both in the eyes and in the ears. So what's the sound game like?
I would say this game is super minimal. There's only one song-ish. It's the theme song, and it's not really a song. It's just kind of like a whoa, 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 whoa sound like that. It's not really even a song. It's just very minimal. You'll hear that in the menus, and then you hear it when you boot people off of the ship, which is a hilarious thing. Like, when you vote somebody off, it literally says, blank got booted off, and you see your guy in space just zoom across the screen getting booted off into space, which is pretty funny. And that's actually kind of a cool thing too, is there's actually multiple settings, but the default setting is when you boot somebody off, you don't know if they're an imposter. So, like, say we're like, Steve's the imposter. He's definitely the imposter. And you're like, no, dude, I've been doing tasks. What the hell? It's like, yeah, right. Boot him off. When we kick you off, you're not an imposter, but we don't know. And then of course when you go out, it doesn't actually tell you. So during the entire game, you don't really even know, it just adds to the fun. But yeah, the sound effects are just like a bunch of bleeps and bloops from the different like things you do in the environment. Like the credit card, I'll make like a jing 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 sound effect, and then like you have like a like electrical. You have to like connect these electrical wires. You hear like a little electrical sound. There's really no music when you're playing. It's just super quiet, and you're just doing tasks in just like a really quiet environment. And then if you do like there's also a mechanic in the game, which I didn't mention, is of course when you find a body you report it and then the meeting starts. But if you see somebody do something suspicious, you can walk to this giant button on this table, and it says emergency meeting. You can press it, and then you can start a meeting at any point too. If you see somebody like, oh, that dude vented over there, or that dude looks like he's about to kill somebody, or whatever, and you can go push a button and start a meeting. But yeah, you just have to ask about the sound, and there's not much there, but I think it kind of works for the camaraderie. We're just yelling at each other that each other's are assholes and lying to each other the whole time. So I think that's pretty much the main draw to the game.
I guess the real soundtrack is the song of your friends in the background screaming that you're a liar and a fake and a cheat. All right, so closing thoughts, and then where you feel like this one's going to land on the old quest log.
Closing thoughts is I do think this game is really fun, but you definitely have to have a good crew to do it with, and you need voice chat. Like, you need a crew that you can do voice chat with, because just going and playing with randoms, which I've tried before, is just not as fun. It just really isn't. And if this game had built-in voice chat, I definitely think it would be a stronger contender for a main quest game, but it's a side quest game for the fact that you need to have an entire crew that you can roll with this game. But honestly, I think this is earned. I think the popularity is earned. I think this is a fantastic game, and it's just a very entertaining thing to do with friends if you need to kill a couple hours and just have some fun.
Awesome. So we got us a pair of delicious side quest games for dinner tonight.
Pretty much, yeah.
I'm liking it. Awesome. So hopefully either one of those games sounded interesting to you. Again, I'm not sure if you'll be able to actually find Among Us in a Google search. It's a little bit hard for the SEO, but good luck. But we got one more section that we want to talk about with everybody. And this is something that we wanted to start rolling in, not every episode, but when we can. And that is 10 upcoming indies. So, we're not necessarily every episode looking what's coming out in the next 2 weeks or anything like that. But we do want to kind of put some stuff on people's radars. One, because, some of these games might show up on a quest log in the future. But two, we just want to help shed a little bit of light on some games that are coming up that you may or may not have been heard about, just to get you excited, get you pumped about them, or open your eyes to something that you might like that you had no idea was coming out, since we all know that the marketing budget on an indie game doesn't always live up to that AAA style. So,
And this is actually a suggestion that we kind of spun out and made its own segment of from a user on Twitter that hit us up in the DMs. His name is @AdventureHawkins on Twitter. He says, I came across your podcast because I was originally looking for an indie gaming podcast that would have a segment that talks all about the new indie games that are coming out each month. Haven't been able to find a single one. It's mind-boggling, really. Not saying you guys need to add it to your show, but I would love it if you guys were my go-to for that kind of info. I can't be the only one wanting this from an indie gaming podcast. And here we are. We're going to be doing this for you. And we're going to... Well, we're doing it for everybody, but this kind of this kind of spun up the idea to... We kind of did our own spin on it. We're going to be doing 10 upcoming indies for like the next few months.
Yeah, and I'd say, maybe every 4 or 5 episodes or so, we'll toss this in as one of our rotating segments. Just, when we feel like we have a batch of indie games that we want to talk about, or when it's been a while since the ones that we last talked about have come and gone, we'll give you a new batch. So, good idea, Adventure Hawkins. I'm putting that idea on the main quest.
You're putting that idea on the main quest? Nice.
Yeah. All right, so why don't you talk about our first one here?
The first game we have here is called Nuts. It's coming out. I gotta say it more crazy. Nuts. Anyway, I just imagine the Guts announcer saying it. Guts. You know what I mean?
The whole day I've been singing. Do you have it?
Anyway, Apple Arcade, PC, Switch, coming January 22nd. So it's probably going to be out by the time you are listening to this. Oh, it's Apple Arcade January 22nd, PC on February 4th. No Switch release date, I don't think yet, but you got a puzzle adventure game where you're taking pictures of squirrels in a super colorful and awesome filter, and it looks kind of fun and weird and wacky and zany. What do you think about this title?
Yeah, it looks really cool. It reminds me a lot of like Firewatch. Like, it's a lot of outdoor environments. Obviously, it's forests and stuff because you're taking pictures of squirrels. But Firewatch, if you applied like some really intense like Photoshop or Instagram filtering over it, like it's just like bright neon colors. Like any screenshot you look at is going to kind of have like one main color, and then maybe 1 or 2 other offset colors. So it's very visually unique. And I can't speak too much to how it's actually going to play, but I'll be honest, I like the idea of a game where you're just like sightseeing and taking pictures of animals. So, you know what? If you want to combine Bug Smacks, that's the less popular follow-up cereal to Honey Smacks is Bug Smacks. If you want to take Bug Snacks and combine that with Pokemon Snap, I say, yeah, let's take some pictures of squirrels. Sounds cool.
Okay, well, the next game we have on our list here is Cyber Shadow, which is, I'm looking really forward to this one. It's coming out PlayStation 5, 4, Xbox One, Switch, PC, your toaster and your refrigerator, pretty much everything. Coming out January 26th. It's a Ninja Gaiden-esque game from Mechanical Head Studios. The first game that's published that's not produced by Yaku Games. This is the first game as a publisher that they're doing. It's an 8-bit aesthetic. It follows a cybernetic ninja named Shadow who sets out to rescue his clan in a world overrun by machines. Looks pretty good.
Yeah. I mean, it's probably obvious from the Ninja Gaiden influence, but just at like quick glance, it looks a lot like The Messenger, which is a great title. So yeah, I'm really looking forward to this one. I love this style of game, and I just recently went through the first 2 Ninja Gaidens on NES for the first time in my life. All these decades later, I finally went through them. So this is, for me, actually pretty topical. I'm pretty pumped.
Sorry. From the trailer, it looks like there is kind of a focus on big boss battles, which seems pretty cool. So like large, chunky, awesome pixel art, which I'm looking forward to. I was so looking forward to it that one night I was sleepy, and I pre-ordered it on PlayStation, and it's coming out on Game Pass, and I'm like, well, I supported them. It's like I pay for Game Pass. I probably should be playing games over there, but oh well, So I'll be on that game day one. It's gonna be a good time.
Pre-ordering a game that's gonna be on Game Pass is the new accidentally ordering a game that you already have sitting on the shelf. I
Pretty
like
much
it.
the digital version of that. Yeah.
Yep. All right, so
Oh,
next up we have a game called Disjunction. It's coming out on PS4, Xbox One, Switch, and PC, so consoles and PC, on January 28th. It's a top-down game set in 2048. It's like a stealth action, high-pixel art style. And what's cool is it has an interconnected story with 3 different playable protagonists, which I personally am a pretty big sucker for. I love any time that there's multiple stories in games that weave together, especially if you can see the same events from multiple perspectives. Like you experience something as one person, and then later you see, oh, that other character actually was there at the time, but they were just, unable to contact the character or like doing their own thing. I always think that's a lot of fun.
it has a really awesome look to it. It almost reminds me of like it's not cyberpunk from what I can tell, but it has that neon like drenched environment style to it, and it definitely reminds me of early Metal Gear Solid gameplay, because there's a lot of vision cones and sneaking up on people, stabbing them in the throat type of gameplay, which really caught my eye. This one's on my radar for sure.
Nice.
Next up, we got a game called Speed Limit, which me and you were both looking at this one and it just kind of was like, what is this game at first? But anyway, it comes out on Nintendo Switch, PlayStation 4, Xbox One, and PC February 16th. Speed Limit is a non-stop genre-warping arcade experience that never slows down. No cuts, no laps into chaos. Speed Limit is an old-school action extravaganza boiled down to its core elements: hard, fast, addictive.
I mean, the best way I could describe this game to people is take the movie Speed and like combine it with like sometimes Outrun, sometimes like Micro Machines, or RC Pro-Am, and then
Spy Hunter?
Spy Hunter is a good example, yeah. And then toss in a dash of Katana Zero with this kind of like really trippy, very like aggressive in your face style. It seems like a lot, but it seems cool.
Yeah, we were watching the gameplay trailer together, and I'm just like, dude, this is going directly on my list. I have to play this now. It just looks really, really fun. I love the idea of taking like just snapshots of arcade ideas and then putting it all together into this one hopefully congruous experience. It looked kind of all over the place in the trailer, but hopefully the game, when it comes out, it's like start to ending, and it actually makes sense. I don't know.
Yeah.
It just looks so chaotic, but it does look like a lot of fun. Definitely one to keep on your radar.
For sure.
The next up, we got Blue Fire, which is coming out on Switch, PlayStation 4, Xbox One, PC on February 4th. This is a 3D action platformer.
And honestly, this is one that I'm pretty excited about. If you're familiar with 3D platformers, this won't look too unusual for you. It's got kind of a neat style. It reminds me a little bit of like, I don't know, like Little Ninjas from the 360 era, or Mini Ninjas, not Little Ninjas.
Mini Ninjas, yeah.
Mini Ninjas combined with almost like Death Jr. on the PSP. But yeah, it looks like a lot of fun. Seems like there's going to be a lot of different movement options and mechanics and things. And I don't know, I still feel like we're always just starved for 3D platformers. So anytime I see a cool looking 3D platformer, I get excited.
Yeah, I was watching a gameplay trailer for it. I'm not sure how sold I am on it, but it's definitely one I'm like, this could be fun. This has potential just from what I saw. So I have it as a big maybe for me on my pile.
It's very much my style of game.
Yeah. Anyway, next up we got Little Nightmares 2, PlayStation 4, Xbox One, Switch, PC, coming February 11th. It's a sequel to the side-scrolling horror title that had puzzle platforming mechanics with new scenarios, new environments, and a new story. Did you ever play the original title?
I did, yeah. I liked the first Little Nightmares a lot. I love a good puzzle platformer. So if you played the first one, you'll obviously be excited for the second one. Or like if you played Shady Part of Me, which is a more recent one, this is another one that's very much in that style. They have a cool like Tim Burton kind of like creepy but manageably creepy aesthetic to them, and yeah, it's clever. The first one did some interesting things and had a really trippy ending. I thought like the last hour of that game sticks with you, so I'm curious how they're going to try to top that in the new one.
I do think one of us will probably end up bringing the first one for an indie pick down the line. I'm assuming.
Yeah.
I feel like that's a good candidate for one. But yeah, I think that the first one kind of stuck with me. I do think the character animation is so kind of like unnerving and just weird and creepy that I think that that's probably what stuck with me the most is just the animation style of everything, because everything kind of has like a jilted, like almost dead but not dead look to it as it's moving around the environments. So it just gives it that uneasy vibe throughout the entire game. So I'm looking forward to this one.
Yeah, me too. It looks like a lot of fun, and the first one was just so good that I'm already set up and ready for it. So next up here, we have a game called Curse of the Dead Gods. It's coming out on all the major consoles except for the new ones, so PS4, Switch, Xbox One, and then it's coming out on Windows as well. This comes out on March 3rd. It actually comes out of early access on March 3rd, so this has been on Steam for a while in early access. You might actually have already played it, but it is getting its 1.0 release, so we decided to bring it. And it's a very stylized roguelite isometric action game. So I know a lot of people are coming hot off the heels in 2020 of playing Hades, which is a roguelike isometric action game. And I mean, the best thing I could say about this game is if you loved Hades, this seems like it could scratch that itch if you've already set Hades down. It's not the exact same thing, not the same aesthetic, not the same tone, but it has a little bit of some visual similarities, and it has that same roguelike kind of action RPG run-based platforming.
Yeah, it's that top-down hack and slash Diablo-esque, more action focused than Diablo, of course. It does look cartoony, but it's less cartoony than Hades, because Hades is three-dimensional, but it looks even more kind of flatter, if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
This is actually looks like a bunch of mini figures fighting each other on the set, but definitely looks like Hades inspired, even though it probably wasn't. But yeah, that definitely looks pretty cool.
Yeah, it's been in early access for a while, so it's definitely its own thing. I don't want to just make it out to seem like the younger brother to Hades, but it's an easy point of comparison, especially if you look up some footage of it. So yeah, I feel like personally I'm good for roguelites for the time being, but whenever that itch comes a calling, maybe this is one that I'll pick up.
Yeah, and of course Hades was our game of the year last year, or the indie game of the year last year. Yep. So I mean, it's going to be hard to top that for me. But like you said, if there's a moment where I see this maybe on a Steam sale, this feels like a Steam sale game to me.
Yeah,
but
for sure.
Like, I'd pick it up and check it out. It definitely looks pretty cool. It's very pretty, and it looks like fun. So, yeah. The next game we have on our list here is Mundaun?
Mundaun?
Mundaun? Mundaun? I don't know. Nintendo Switch, PlayStation 4, Xbox One, coming March 16th. Kind of like a black and white / sepia-toned, scary, spooky, shit your pants puzzle first-person adventure in indoor and outdoor environments, and has a really cool look to it. I think this one just stood out to me just from the art style and the vibe, just on the outset looking into this game.
Yeah, I mean, it's all got that sepia filter, which is one thing. But then beyond that too, just like the art direction, it has this kind of this creepy weirdness to it. It feels like a really stylized or really artistic Amnesia game, from what I can tell from the trailers. Yeah, I'm actually pretty pumped for this one. One, because I feel like we don't get a lot of horror stuff in the indie scene. I mean, there's plenty, but compared to like 2D puzzle platformers, horror is a lot less represented.
Yeah,
and then two, it's like, I didn't know anything about this game until we started doing prep for the show. So like, this is just a new thing for me to put on my radar. And come October, I might have to bust this one out. Yeah,
it's definitely going to be like a spooky vibe time type of game. But I don't know, like, for me, for horror, I feel like it takes like an interesting look or an interesting entry point. If it's just kind of cookie cutter, I kind of stay away from that. So some of those horror games that a lot of people like, I don't know, Five Nights at Freddy's and stuff, I kind of, that doesn't really do much for me. But the way this one looks, kind of, in the style, just, it kind of like oozes like creepiness, it kind of has that Oh, I don't know. I feel like I could get into this one, so it's definitely on my radar.
Yeah, looks really cool. So yeah, look it up. Like Mundaun. I know you spelled it once, but just in case. Next up, coming sometime in March, we don't know exactly when, is a game that we're both very, very much anticipating.
Mm-hmm.
That is Kena Bridge of Spirits, coming out on PS4, PS5, and PC. And if you haven't seen this game, if you didn't see it in like the Sony showcase, or I think was it E3 that it was shown to, but it's a 3D platformer, 3D like puzzling platformer, where Kena is this very like cameo, Elements of Power inspired, or almost kind of like a Pixar or DreamWorks character, and you're platforming in these gorgeous like forest environments and cave environments and things like that. And then there's all these little, I don't even know what you'd call them, like creatures. They kind of remind me of soot sprites.
Yeah, like imps, little imps, I guess.
Yeah,
I don't know. Yeah.
Little imps that follow you around, and you use those kind of Pikmin style to help you navigate the world, solve puzzles, and do combat and stuff like that. So it just it looks amazing. It's the studio's name, I think, is Ember Lab, and this is like their first game. It's like just a real small team. It's like brothers, I think, that are putting it together.
Yeah, the brothers came up with the concept, and then they have like a small team helping them to build the game out. And definitely, this game, you know that old saying, I know people always say this about Ratchet and Clank, but this even more than others just feels like someone said, okay, Pixar, make a game. Yep. Like, that's kind of how it feels to me just looking at it. It's so gorgeous. And the gameplay looks really fun. It looks like it has some kind of like third-person hack and slash styles to it, where you know, strike somebody, have to back up, use your dudes to distract somebody, go and stealth kill them or whatever. But yeah, just generally, I love a platformer, and this looks like just a really great experience. And they said it's not super, super long. I think it's only supposed to be like a nice 6 to 8 hour experience. But that's nice for me. I like that. You know, nice and short and sweet and beautiful and charming, and the music sounds amazing. Yeah, I'm pretty hyped for this one.
Yeah, me too. Definitely. So definitely check out Kena Bridge of Spirits when that comes out. And then the last game that we have that's upcoming that you might want to keep an eye on is Tunche. Is that how we settled on it being pronounced?
Yeah, at first when I read it myself, I heard Tunche, but I actually heard a dev, I think it was the dev interview or somebody talking about the devs saying it's called Tunche. Might have been like a Nintendo Direct or something. But yes, it's Tunche. Tunche.
Awesome. And that's coming out on Switch, PS4, Xbox One, and PC. I don't know if it has a definitive release date yet, but it's coming out sometime in March, I believe. And this is an action RPG beat 'em up, very cartoonish. Think of like maybe a halfway point between, I don't know, like Castle Crashers and Odin Sphere, I think is a comparison you drew. So it's side-scrolling beat 'em up, but your attacks deal damage that like mathematical numbers of damage. Like you'll punch and it'll do 18 damage per punch, that type of thing. So combines beat 'em up with some RPG stuff there. It's got a real cartoony style. It's very, very cute, very colorful. I don't know if it has multiple characters that are pulled from other franchises, but at the very least you can play as Kid from A Hat in Time, the main character from A Hat in Time.
Yeah, I was kind of surprised by that. It kind of feels almost out of place in the what the rest of the game is, because then you see Hat Kid there, you're like, but it's kind of cool. I like it when games do that sometimes.
Yeah, I'm sure Shovel Knight is in there somewhere.
Oh yeah, he's got to be right. It kind of reminded me like almost like a hand painted art style, I would say. Yeah. And yeah, definitely looks pretty cool. Go watch a trailer, see if it's kind of the type of game you're into, because I think that it might be a little hit and miss for some people, but if you're into that brawler, that action RPG style, you might get some fun out of it.
For sure. So, yeah, that's 10 upcoming indie games. Some you might have heard of, some maybe you haven't. And hopefully there's at least one in there that piqued your interest or that you can look forward to now, too. This is certainly not everything that's coming out in the next couple of months. It would be impossible for us to ever keep up with all the different releases between stuff coming out on Steam, all the different console stores, coming out on stuff like Itch. So we'll try to keep bringing these every so often. We'll try to keep a nice blend of, I guess, like bigger budget, AAA type releases and then smaller stuff that you might not have heard of. But yeah, some cool games coming up in the near future.
Awesome. I think that's it. That's an episode there. What do you think?
That's a solid one. I'm sad to see it go, but you know what the best part is? There's always another one.
Awesome. Thanks, guys, for hanging out with us during this episode. And I think it's time to plug some stuff. You can find me at Frantic Society on Twitter. Where can they find you on the interweb, Steve?
You can either find me at Blinkoom on Twitter or at Blinkoom on Twitch. Especially come hang out on the Twitch page. I stream indie games a couple times a week. Tuesdays, Thursdays, Fridays from 7 to 10 Central. And other stuff whenever I find the time. But yeah, anywhere you want to find me, it's Blinkoom. That ends with OOM. M like, man, what a good day for indie games. And M like Mundaun.
Mundaun. Somebody needs to pronounce that for us so we know how it's pronounced, but I kind of like just pronouncing it however. Anyway.
Yeah. But if you don't want to talk to one of us directly, although we're very interesting people, you can also reach out to the show, as we mentioned before. You can follow the podcast at IndieQuest Pod on Twitter.
We also want whatever feedback you guys can give. Indie games thoughts, questions, feedback for an episode, just a comment, just a funny story about an indie game or your experiences with indie games. Send those over to IndieQuestPod@gmail.com. And I would say there's a 99.9% chance that it's going to be, I'll just say 100% chance that you're going to hear your emails on the show, because we want as much feedback as we possibly can get. And we're also a part of the fantastic Polymedia Network. There's a lot of really awesome shows over there. There's Polykill. There's PD's Power Hour. There is Off Kilter. Tales of the Lesser Medium. If you want to find out about our awesome network of just incredible shows that are just really entertaining to listen to, a lot of great interviews, topics of discussion, a lot of jokes thrown in here and there. If you want to hear any of this awesome stuff, go over to polykill.com.
Yeah, there's plenty of gaming shows over there too, but then we also have some stuff that's not necessarily gaming focused. So whatever you're into, there's a show over there for you. Although you're here listening to the plugs at the end of an IndieQuest episode, so you're probably into games. So you'll like what you find over on the network, I guarantee.
All right, now, Steve, why don't you sign us off and say goodbye to the good folks out there?
Thanks, everyone, for listening. Hope you have a wonderful rest of your day. Until we hear from you next, just remember, Garfield hates Mundaun days.
Oh, God.
Do you have it? 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 Do you have it?